Welcome to the Alchematics CyberSEC Leaders Webinar Series. I'm Richard Ritchie, your host and Managing Director of Alchematics. As many of you know already, Alchematics is a niche executive search and recruitment firm focused on providing top talent to the IT channel industry across EMEA, with a strategic focus on cybersecurity. As part of our ongoing client and candidate engagement program, we're running the CyberSEC Leaders Webinar Series, aimed at helping business leaders like yourselves identify and attract key talent in the industry by discussing career objectives, trends, threats, and solutions with a variety of industry guests. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Ashfak Pathan, Principal Solutions Architect at Spire Solutions, a regional leader in information security solutions and services. Say hello, please, Ashfak.
Hello, everyone. Ramadan Kareem to you all again, and I'm very happy to be with Richard over here.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Ashfak. Thanks very much for joining us, my friend. Well, look, for those of you who don't know Ashfak, why don't you please start by letting our attendees know who you are and what it is you do?
Sure. So, as Richard mentioned, my name is Ashfak Pathan. I serve as Principal Solution Architect at a very niche cybersecurity value-added distributor, which is Spire Solutions. During my current role, I help organizations defend advanced threat by advising, educating, consulting, and positioning niche cybersecurity. I am in the cybersecurity industry for past 10 years and in the Middle East for, of course, the same years as well. I started my journey back in India, but then I moved to Dubai, and I have seen tremendous growth in cybersecurity over here in the region, and I will continue doing that over here.
How many years have you been in the cybersecurity industry now, Ashfak?
It's been a decade now.
A decade, fantastic. And you mentioned something interesting there. You said that obviously at Spire, you guys are very niche. Is there certain parts of the market that you guys focus on specifically?
Right, that's very interesting topic you have touched on, right? So Spire Solution has been known in the market to bring in niche cybersecurity solutions. What we've been doing is that we are not like a traditional box mover, which most of the other distribution model operate, right? Wherein they operate with the firewalls or the AV solutions or likewise other solutions. What we have gone beyond this is basically identifying the niche gap within the cybersecurity industry, right? And most of our customers in the region, enterprise customers like defense, right, ministries, government, healthcare, banking and finance sectors are looking for addressing these challenges, because as we understand, the attackers have become smarter. It's not.
Yeah, we hear about this every day, right?
Yes. You cannot stop all the attacks with having a firewall or an AV solution. Everything has a shelf life, right? It is important, though, but you need to be resilient. You need to have defense in depth, and that's where we come into the picture. We make sure that we bring in these technology who are leaders into certain areas and position them within the market by going to the customers, educating them, creating awareness around it, and then help them address the challenge or the advanced threat with these kind of solutions. So in a nutshell, this is what Aspire Solution has been doing in the Middle East and Africa, and that's our specialization.
Excellent. I think awareness is a key thing these days, right? Because everybody has a baseline awareness of cybersecurity, but it can be quite a confusing topic because there's so much to, as you and I were talking about the other day, there's so much to defend against, especially with digital transformation these days. Is knowing what is relevant for each of our businesses, right? I'm interested to understand from a from a solution architect perspective, what does this mean for you? As a solution architect, what is it you do? What is your role in this?
Right. So as a solution architect, my job role is to educate and consult the customers to identify what are their requirements and position the technology in a way which can be a valuable reason for them to choose and to get into this domain, or to bring these solutions into their organization. With this said, right, as a day-to-day job, I help customers in understanding the technology. So I present them. I make sure that I can demonstrate the technology so that they see a face value of the solutions. I also make sure that if the customer requires to do a kind of a proof of concept within their environment, I help in that case as well. And of course, if needed, doing the implementation. And this journey is like a trusted advisor. It's a relation between the consultant and the consumer or the end users. We tend to build this relation because it's not just a point selling. It's not just a restaurant where you order, you eat and go, right? We wanted to keep this as a relation, which is very much needed in the cybersecurity industry. If you don't have trust, you cannot secure things, right? It's a trust relations which we build with the customer, and this is what our day-to-day job looks like in building the relationship, creating a face value of the solutions, showing the value of the solution, and then taking end-to-end for the customers.
Yeah, I've always liked the title solution architect, because for me, although there is obviously a component of this which is clearly commercial, let's say, from a business or sales perspective, I think the idea of designing a bespoke solution for a client is key, because like I said, it's that bespoke element. It's not just off the shelf, right? It's understanding your client's needs and building something tailored to what the requirements are. I think that's,
and if you look at it, if you look at it into cybersecurity, it's very complex, right? If you look at it, there are a lot of components which needs to be addressed. There is compliance, there is processes, there are technologies. Then on the infrastructure side, you have your on-premise, you may have adopted towards cloud, you have different branches, you have different locations to protect. And to design this, you need a mindset, of the whole picture, which means that how is the organization operating, right? What could be their challenges? Because each vertical has their own laws, their own processes, their own areas where they see they have a critical information to be protected, right? And we have to target in that fashion, and that's where the architecture experience, that's where the design experience comes into the picture, and this is what we do.
Excellent. I think it's important that there's obviously there's inherently a lot of trust involved in this role, right? Because obviously when you I guess when you instruct a company, or you have a solution architect come and evaluate your organization, you can't just tell them what the problem is and let them give you a solution. It's more they have to literally lift up the car bonnet, have a look underneath, and see what's at play there. Because often I think companies, they don't know what they don't know, if that makes sense. So there's obviously an education piece, an awareness piece. I'm interested to know, Ashfak, perhaps you can give me just shine a little light on how has the industry, or how has the cybersecurity industry as a whole changed over the past 12 to 18 months?
Right. So unfortunately or fortunately, COVID has changed the way businesses operate, right? Organizations have started adopting the cloud infrastructure, moving towards cloud applications and services, and also work from home culture, which was not there, a few months ago before the COVID started, right? The whole adoption is like a sudden change for every business who is operating across the globe. And this has opened up a huge attack surface area for the attackers. And we have seen, you might have read about it, the attacks has been in a rise. Organizations are getting compromised because when you do certain transformation into business, it's security is not the major concern, right? You need to make sure your business is operating first, and then you bolt on the security on top of it. And I see that that is a big challenge in the industry, where security needs to be seen as a business driver and should be created, or transformation should be along with the security, in the mind. And this is
Yeah.
what I see that, has changed drastically how organizations are operating, and the security industry has also been affected because of this.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, like I said, maybe historically cybersecurity has just been bolted on as an afterthought for many companies, but I guess with the emergence of uh, I'm nervous to say function because I don't think that's particularly correct, but let's just call it Devsecops, right? The whole like concept of Devsecops implies that there are multiple functions at play here, but security is obviously one component that's very much within that rather than just an afterthought, right? We were talking to someone from AWS a few months ago, and she was articulating that, yeah, security is not the last thing that gets sorted. It's part of the development of an organization to make sure that everything is protected or safe, right?
Of course, and I agree to the point where you mentioned that it's always starts with the business objective first, and then security. But the mindset has changed already, and we have seen regulators are also imposing that the mindset is towards security and not
Mm,
just looking at the business side. And there is a lot of work needs to be done in the industry, and we will see that change during in a very short period of time, because everybody is now conscious of the personal data. Everybody is now have started understanding the latest threats which has been affecting the organization across
mm,
the world, like the ransomwares which affected last year. And
yeah,
most of the half of the world was being affected because of this, right? Imagine
yeah,
this thing happening on a critical infrastructure where you have so much of disaster could be done because of this threats. So
mm,
this needs to be at the board level, right?
yeah.
The security should be in the topic has to be started at the board level. This is what my recommendation is.
But do you see then, because of the changes that have happened over the last 12 to 18 months, the rapid way in which companies have had to digitally transform, the needs now to not the new need, the new recognition, perhaps the security is definitely a part of that. Is the decision-making process as far as adopting cybersecurity solutions, has that changed? Are there different people that are now stakeholders in the decision-making process?
Yeah, so because of this change which has happened, because of the COVID, the work from home culture, it has opened up, a lot of risk within the organization, and a lot of, and bigger organization is aware of this, and they want to identify, what are their risks within the organization. And we have seen quite a huge demand in some specific requirements or some specific areas of cybersecurity, which is in the trends right now, and that is a challenge for the customers within their organization,
Mm,
namely security posture validation, right?
mhm,
Or it could be meant as risk to my critical data systems.
yeah,
Example: I have a banking organization. Um, because of work from home, because of the different third-party supplier who is working for my banking organization or any other organization,
mhm,
they bring in huge risk to the organization. If they get compromised, customer needs to ask this question, right? Or the organization needs to ask this question: what is my crown jewel? What am I protecting within the organization? It starts with that,
mm,
right? It could be my personal data, it could be my credit card data, it could be uh, you know uh, uh, there is IP informations, and
mm,
intellectual properties, right? The IP could be meant in two different ways. So intellectual property, these are very, very important things for the organization to protect. And they want to understand, if any of their end user gets compromised, is there a
mm,
way for an attacker to reach to that, important
yeah,
crown jewel, which is
mm,
protected with so many different defense layers. So this is
yeah,
kind of an risk which we have identified, and customers wants to evaluate. This actually evaluates their existing security tools, right? They want to
yeah,
validate whatever we have been protecting so far, is it good
mm.
enough? And that is very important for any organization to know, right? That is the first question a CEO or CISO would ask. I have invested so much. Am I still protected? I need that confidence. I need to go to the board and say, yes, I am protected. This is the report I have. And these are the tools which is telling me that, we have filled, or we have, we're making sure that we are continuously monitoring what is happening, and we are protecting our crown jewel from the threats, because you cannot always win against the threat actors. You need to minimize as much as possible, the damage. We need to minimize the damage as much as possible, right? And make it difficult for the attackers to come within the organization and compromise and create disruption, or a loss of reputation. I need to do that. And of course, you might have heard about the other attack. I don't want to name the vendor, but the supply chain attack, right? What every big organization cannot run independently. They have third-party suppliers. They have third-party vendors. How do I manage their risk? If they get compromised, my reputation is at loss because I do business with them, right? So that is also very important. New emerging areas where customers have been requesting and asking, and this is where we specialize. This is where our experience comes into the picture, and we help customers to achieve and fill this gap. Third example I would also put in over here is about the threat intelligence and the automation. The security industry, we know that the skilled resources is a problem, right? You cannot find the skilled resources, and if you find it, it's very, very difficult to retain as well, right? How do I make sure with whatever resources I have, I am utilizing up to the highest level? This analysis, these resources are skilled. They are not supposed to be doing the day-to-day job, like I see an alert and I remediate it. The day-to-day. Most of this can be done or remediated or mitigated through automation, and that's where the new areas of automation has come into cybersecurity, which has I would say benefited a lot of the organizations, and also elevated your existing security analyst, because you're not taking away their job, you're making them more smart, right? We are not in a business of taking away anybody's job. We wanted to make sure whatever you've been doing, right, do it smarter, right? Because
so
security,
use anything that can be automated, automate it, and then move on to solve another problem, right? Because there will be other problems. I think a lot of, and again, this conversation, or this part of the conversation has come up a lot in recent webinars. The idea that there's no such thing as being fully secure. Let's say you have to accept there will be breaches or threats, at least that make it beyond the perimeter to some extent. It's how you deal with that to some extent is a vital component of it, right? So putting together a cybersecurity strategy is not just about keeping people out. It's about, if something happens, how do you deal with it?
Of course, you want to minimize the dwell time of the attacker, right? So that the important critical thinking part has been done by the human, and then the normal activity which can be automated based on your processes should be done by the machine, and that's where the machine learning and AI is now a very big factor in cybersecurity.
Definitely. AJ, sorry, I missed your comment. AJ said live cases on virtual meeting threats and risks mitigation steps. So I think that's just, he didn't write it as a question, but I think that's more of an insight, right? Because this has been, I guess, what we're seeing in the news quite a lot lately, right?
Right, and that's where I address the first point of the security, posture validations. I have employees working from home. They are using tools like GoToMeeting. It could be Teams, which was not it was not allowed earlier, right? And now they've been using, and this can become a vector for an attacker to become an entry point within the organization. So I need to look at it from that perspective, that if my end user get compromised, right, is my critical data at risk, right?
Quite right. So what do you see now as if we obviously we've looked back into how things have changed in the past. How do you anticipate? Excuse me, my teeth. How do you anticipate things changing over the next 12 to 18 months from a industry perspective, whether it's approach or tools?
So in terms of approach, I have already mentioned that we can introduce, or we can have the technologies or solutions to bridge this gap, to make sure that organization is thinking, or creating a strategy towards reducing the attack surface. This is is what my understanding and opinion to most of our customers.
Mm-hmm. When you say attack surface, is this the advent of 5G? Am I right in saying that this in itself increases the attack surface, given the I guess unlimited bandwidth that it provides?
I would say 5G is a technology. It's an enabler which is much
Mm.
needed in the industry to make sure to make sure that the digital transformation which is happening is
Yeah.
it's not choked up, and of
Mm.
course it brings its own risk, and it has its own challenges, and of course the advantages as well. We need to
Yeah.
find a balance between how do I transform, and also make sure the risk is also being addressed.
Yeah.
So organization needs to have that strategy in hand, and of course bigger organizations in the telecom industry is already taking care of this.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you another question. So looking ahead 5 to 10 years down the line, what does the cybersecurity industry look like?
I would say 5 to 10 years is a quite a long time, right? The dynamics changes immediately. You might have seen it. The COVID has
Yeah.
immediately changed the dynamics. I would say in the short and mid-term, I would say the cybersecurity industry would be talking more towards IoT and IIoT security, right? That's
Yeah.
because if you look at it right now, uh, in your room or my room, you will see 5 to 10 different gadgets which are getting connected. And
Mm.
even in the enterprise organization, it's not different, right? You have these devices. You cannot just live without it. You need to adopt this, because this is how you see transformation happening. And of course,
Mm.
when you have these devices, these are not a standard devices like what you have in Windows or Mac or Linux. You have
Yeah.
this standardized in the enterprise. These devices have their own way of operating. They have their own limitations, but
Mm.
they still get connected. I need to identify the risk which is coming through that, and today you will see that a lot of news which are coming is that the attacker is compromising these smart devices and
Yeah.
are infiltrating the organization. So this is what I see as one of midterm and short term. The
Mm-hmm.
second long term, what I would see is and of course the cloud adoption. Right, I forgot to mention cloud adoption is there, but not there in our region. I would see it is going to pick up drastically, and it could be very fast, and few of the
Yeah.
providers have already entered into the market, but it's not yet, the adoption is not as fast as we anticipate. But yes,
Mm-hmm.
we are looking in a very short term and mid term, this would be a big adoption. And of course the challenges, right? I need to be security conscious as well. I need to make sure
Yeah.
I'm securing the cloud infrastructure, whether my
Mm.
applications are SaaS based or PaaS based. Need to make sure I'm securing that. And in a long term, I strongly believe that the way web has changed the whole uh, way of looking at businesses. But if you remember a few years ago, people were saying if you are not having a website, you will be out of business, right? Now in future, what I see that if you are not adopting containerization, cloud,
Mm.
or blockchain, right, which is a long term, I see that blockchain would be a long term area of adoption. If you don't
Yeah.
adopt that, you will be out of business.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think you're right. It's always easy to look back on things, and I guess that's kind of the mindset, right? You kind of fast forward 10 years and think, okay, looking back to today, would I think that I need to adopt it? Should I be thinking, damn, I wish I adopted Declared, I wish I migrated to Declared, or I wish I paid more attention to that cybersecurity webinar. So look, they've got a couple of questions and insights in the chat box that I wanted to just read out. So Rengist says, says, how do you see the awareness of organizations around the importance of social engineering aspects?
Right, and I see there are three major challenges over here in the industry today, and within that three challenges, awareness is also part of it. But before awareness, I would say regulation plays an important role, right? The laws of the land, right? Every big countries have started at the, pushing regulation at a very high level, right? If you go to Europe or you go to US, they have GDPR, so you have to comply with CIS or certain benchmarks. Financial industry has been in the forefront of creating these regulations, but specific to finance industries, which is PCI and DSS. But a lot of the other areas are also untapped. We need to have standard regulations for the entire country, which is there. I see that it is there in the roadmap, but it is moving slowly, right? The adoption is quite, but I see that has to be a number one challenge. The second challenge is of course awareness and training, right? We need to make sure that uh, whenever we need to make sure that the employees are properly trained, are properly properly educated to make sure they have the security knowledge, and they are also evaluated based on that. It's not just you train them and forget about it. You need to make sure they are repeatedly being evaluated on what are the what is the individual risk of a individual human or an employee within the organization. So risk, the way I would put it is that I am more aware about the security. I would not be clicking malicious links. I will identify. There are few steps which you need to follow. Whereas my risk is low, your risk would be high because you are not coming from that background. You need to be educated differently. Your mindset is, it's not towards security, right? So you need to be you need to have interest in learning, because that's not your forte, right? You would not be paying more attention because that's not my thing, right? Why should I be focusing on that? But for a business, this is important. We need to look at individual capacity and then train them accordingly in a gamified manner if possible, and then evaluate them to find out what would be a risk of this particular individual within my organization.
I think the evaluation piece is critical, right? Because ultimately, I think that employees are, dare I say, the weak link here, right? This is ultimately where the companies are most vulnerable. The actions of individuals, either through naivety, ignorance, or I don't know, they don't care. Either way, they're the weak link. So that constant driver of awareness and evaluation, I think, is key, because like you said, companies definitely run awareness programs. Certainly I'm aware of many that do so, but the evaluation piece is something I've not heard of. So I think that's definitely a critical component to perhaps bolt on to the awareness, to make sure that it's just like sales training to some extent. There's no point training someone how to do sales unless you then evaluate the success of the program, right?
Of course.
You've got a couple more questions. So Gamal has a question. Let me just read this out. So cybersecurity investment is disproportional. Companies, they invest much on technology, less on process, and very less on people. Even the most advanced cyber products are useless if our teams do not have the expertise of operating them.
Right. I think it's not a question. I would say it's more of his thoughts, and I completely agree on his thoughts, because in the challenge which I mentioned, right, regulations, right, if we have proper regulations, which, because the regulations has proper guideline processes on how to operate and how to make sure the, in whichever business you are in, you're making sure security is part of your process, and that's very important, right? We need to make sure that it's there, and there are a lot of compliance requirements like PCI DSS or NIST, or in the region we have the NISAs and the ISOs. We need to understand these frameworks, make sure we implement them within the organizations to whatever capacity you are in, because I can understand SMBs might look this regulation in a different way, and the government and ministries and finance sector would look this in a different way. But at every stage, we need to make sure that we map the critical parts and start from there. If we don't start it, then you'll always have consequences on your business.
Yeah, quite right. Another question again from Gamal. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Where do you stand on the importance of investing in people?
Right, and that was my third challenge, right? And people is important. We all understand that we have shortage of resources, skilled resources in cybersecurity, and this is the biggest three challenges within the industry. And if we need to make sure that these skills are motivated, right? They are being trained, they are being provided enough information to make sure that they are happy, and they are working for the organization, because as you know that because there is a shortage of resources, anybody it's very easy to attract this talent, right? It's very easy. The more difficult part is to how do I make sure I retain them, right? And the motivation level of every individual is different, right? Some of them get motivated financially, some of them get motivated on the new ways of learning and the certification, the knowledge they get within the organization.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely back that up. Just given the amount of candidates we engage on from a recruitment perspective, money is actually not the #1 driver for change. It's personal growth, right? So it's a personal growth. We wanted to, the idea of progress or development, you need to be moving forward, adapting things. And then the other thing is people want to be part of the success story of or growth story of an organization. So if as an organization you're able to articulate these two things, the opportunity to grow as an individual, and then also the path on which your company is moving, these are the key things that will attract talent. Obviously money plays a part, of course. Very rarely do people take a salary cut to move, but if they do so because you've got those first two things absolutely nailed. We have another question from Walid. Walid says, what's the latest security trends specifically in the UAE, and how do you assess current security awareness among enterprise CISOs?
Right, so I'll take the first question and I address it. The latest trends and challenges which we have been seeing of late is towards how do I make sure that I'm protecting my work from home workforce, right? Because as I said earlier, during the conversation, is that could be an entry point. And with that, we is one of the challenge for the organization, and that also talks about how do I make sure that my critical data is protected, right? So risk to my critical data from anywhere within the organization. It could be from the cloud, it could be from work from home employee, it could be third-party suppliers. This is the trend and the challenge which customers have seen or is aware of the problem. They have invested huge amount in threat defense, right? So they have invested in the traditional securities, perimeter securities, endpoint securities, and they want to validate and evaluate it if this can stop my stop the attacks, and is there a risk to the organization? This is one of the biggest thing. And of course, the supply chain management is also a new trend which we have been seeing, and the organization who is mature, right, and who wants to optimize themselves, they have been looking for solution like automation and response, right? They want to make sure things are automated, as I said earlier,
Yeah.
and most of the critical thinking or critical responsibility should be the work of the analyst, where there is a requirement that there is an approval needed, or where there is a requirement that this cannot be taken as an automated action because it could disrupt the business if it is been taken mistakenly. So these are the challenge. These are the new trends which have been seen, and of course we have also identified some niche areas for futuristic as well, which is also part of the topic, is about quantum resilience, right? Nations have been investing heavily, and we all know that US and China's have been building quantum computers. The whole idea of building quantum computers by the nation is not to make their processes faster or not to make the production faster, right? The whole idea is, how can I make sure that I use this infrastructure if required against another infrastructure, right? Now we are not in the world of traditional wars like World War I or II or III. The next war which would be happening, and you might already be witnessing it, is it's about superpowers in cybersecurity, right? How do I make sure that I disrupt the nations on their critical infrastructure, and the protection is through cybersecurity, and they would be using this superpower or supercomputers in disrupting the businesses. We have also seen that organization states have been exploiting the vulnerabilities which we are not even aware of, and one of the example is the supply chain attack which has happened in the past, where 60,000 organizations, large enterprise organizations, were compromised because of this, and it was not even the fault of that supply management. It was because of the technology which they have used to build their solution. Nation state attacker compromised that, and that's the way the whole thing started. And they compromised not to disrupt anything. It's just to be there and wait for the big boss to say, okay, give me this information, and they was just collecting the information. Maybe that information which is collected today is encrypted. They might not even be able to use that, right? But harvesting is another new way of of doing a nation state attack. The harvesting means I'll collect whatever encrypted data I have today, and then I'll use these supercomputers to decrypt that data. What is this supercomputers, and what is this encryption? Encryption is two mathematical numbers combined together, and you encrypt the data, right? Now, if I identify these two random numbers, and this is a mathematical, it's a mathematical thing, right? And it's possible through quantum computers. That is why they are building quantum computers, right? And now we need to make sure, how are we quantum protected? How the organizations which are very critical in any country, it's my critical infrastructure. It could be utility, it could be oil and gas, it could be airports, it could be my banking systems and my government entities. These are the big target vectors. They need to identify, how do I make sure that the data which is encrypted, it's quantum resilient.
Yeah, it's interesting. You'd think that if I was in charge of one of these quantum computers, maybe I'd use it to crack Bitcoin account codes. Apparently, there's lots of money just tied up on in accounts where people have forgot their passwords. So the second part of Waleed's question was driving awareness amongst enterprise CISOs. So how would you cover that?
Right. So as the industry leaders into bringing niche technologies, what we have been doing and doing it for quite a long time is creating awareness events, right? We
Mhm.
and Dubai is known for creating this, and hosting this events over here. So we have so wonderful events coming up in line. As you see, JISEC is one of the top
Mm.
event for cybersecurity. Most of the CISOs whom we know, we invite them to this. We help them understand more, because in this event you learn a lot. You think about the trending things. You know about what are the futuristic challenges, and this is the way the CISOs can help themselves in understanding or creating awareness about the cybersecurity. And of course, they can invite their other peers as well. It's not only
Mm.
related to CISOs, but these events are very helpful. Also,
Yeah.
most of the organizations have started, subscribing or speaking with the third-party industry analyst. Uh,
Mm.
they are not tied up to something specific, right? So they evaluate technologies. They talk about it, like the Gartners, the IDCs, and the other similar organizations. uh, this is the place where they can learn a lot about what are the latest challenges,
Excellent.
and of course the
So
awareness.
we're talking quite extensively about obviously the industry, the changes, and what have you. But let's now take it back and talk on a more um, individual level, because you've mentioned a couple of things about there being skill shortages, about the need for companies to invest in people. So at an individual level, how do you ensure that your skills remain relevant? Are there certain certifications or examinations that you do on an ongoing basis? Tell me what your personal approach to this is.
Right, that's very interesting question, because once you are in the industry which is rapidly changing, you need to make sure that you are at the top, right? You
Mm.
understand your first of all, you need to make sure that you're doing right for your organization, and secondly, you need to make sure that how you become a valuable a person within the organization by keeping yourself knowledgeable and on top of it. So my personal way of doing it is reading the articles, reading subscribing to the blogs which give you the latest news and trends which is happening within the industry, because you learn from a lot of breach and attack which is happening
Mm.
across the globe. That's the best way to learn. How do I make sure that I am not in the news, right? So of course you want to be in the news for good reason, but not for this reason. So
Yeah.
you need to make sure that I am making sure that I have the latest information and I implement that within my organizations by
Mm.
following your guideline and processes, and also make sure that you participate in the events, events which is the learning events. And
Mhm.
there are a lot of free events which happens, and there are also paid one. If your organization is also supporting you in giving your budget for your trainings and learnings, you should always utilize that in that. And of course, doing the industry standard certifications, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm not talking about the specific vendor certification, because that is only useful when you're using that tool or technology. But industry
Yeah.
standard certifications give you a face value of you have broad knowledge within this domain, and
Mm.
you can then operate any tools on top of it, right? You don't
Yeah.
need to learn the tools. You need to have the knowledge and understanding of that domain. That's
Mhm.
how I personally keep myself updated.
So, can you give us a couple of examples of the industry kind of norms, if you like, when it comes to certifications? Obviously, not necessarily the vendor-specific ones, but the kind of more broad-based
Right. So
requirements
there
that.
are a lot of industry standard certifications, and personally, which I know and I've done it as well, is
Mm.
ISC2, right? They have
Yeah.
different things for security, cloud security, and different domains for it, and it's
Yeah.
very genuine organizations, which
Yeah.
evaluate, which also update themselves based on the industry dynamics. and the changes which is happening. And of course, there is ISACA, there is SANS training. So if you want to be very hands-on and need to make sure that you know what you're doing, then you would of course use the SANS training.
Yeah. So let me just sorry, my technical, my light just went. Oh, there we go. So I have another question for you. So we've gone on about obviously the companies what have you used from a skills perspective. There's another question I've just had here. Let me just read this out. Sorry, bear with me a second, Ashfak.
Sure, no worries.
I've lost the question. So you mentioned obviously industry events. You participate, you get examinations. What advice would you give to someone who wants to now move into cybersecurity as a field and develop themselves?
Right. So we've been doing this, as a practice within our organization as well. What we have done here is we have started looking at very fresh talent which is coming out of the college. So we have a tie-up and we do run internship programs where we identify talent who wants to create a journey towards cybersecurity, and then we help them within the organizations, mature them, mentor them, and make sure that they learn at an early stage. They learn what is about cybersecurity. So this is the practice which we have started, and if somebody wants to move towards cybersecurity, if this is not part of their program, but they can always do that they can always do it by their own, right? They need to look at what are the certifications, of course. Need to make sure they have the basic understanding of systems and network, because cybersecurity alone cannot do anything, right? They need systems and they need network information, and if you do not have knowledge of that, where are you going to put cybersecurity on, right? So it's the basic understanding has to be there, and there is a need for cybersecurity in the industry. As I said, there is a need for skilled resources, and there are organizations who wants to have junior resources, and under the senior leadership, they can learn, and they can grow and groom themselves. And a lot of organizations have started adopting this.
Yeah, I think it's really, just to kind of wrap up then, I guess the important thing for me from an ongoing education point of view, I mean, I remember this when I was back in the UK years ago when I was a consultant. So as a contractor consultant, paid a lot more, but we used to be on a 5-day notice period, for example. So it'd be very much project based. And what I learned during that period, because I did it for quite a few years, there's no security in being employed. Security comes from being employable, right? And for us, that meant constantly doing, getting accreditations as we go, as the industry evolves, keeping an eye on trends, making sure we've got the new examinations or whatever under our belt, because ultimately we would then sell ourselves to new projects. But if you just become stale and you don't move, especially in a field like cybersecurity, it's very easy, I think, to fall behind. So I think whilst there is definitely an interest from companies to want to upskill their staff to keep them, I think as individuals we need to take it upon ourselves to invest in our own personal development, right?
Of course.
Excellent. Well, look, that's all we have time for today, Ashfak. I just want to say thank you very much for joining us. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I hope you have too.
Yes, I did, and indeed it was a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope it was an educational session for our viewers as well.
Definitely. Well, look, thanks very much, guys, for the questions that you've raised. I hope you enjoyed listening to the session as well. A recording to this session will be posted on the Alchematics website, which is alchematics.com/webinars. in the next couple of days, and it'll also post on our company LinkedIn page as well. So please like and follow for future updates. We'll be back again next month with another CyberSEC leader. If you'd like to join one of these sessions or future sessions as a guest, then please email me directly. That's richard@alconmaddox.com. But also, if your company needs help in sourcing top cybersecurity talent, then again, please reach out to me directly at richard@alconmaddox.com, and my team and I'll be happy to support. That's it today. Thanks very much, guys. Take care, and I will see you next month.
Thank you.